What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another hype versus reality for you guys. And what that's going to be about today is this guy. That's right, folks. This is the Spyderco Domino, and this is the Bento Box exclusive with Blue G10 and CTS 204P, which is pretty much in the family with M390 and CTS and CPM 20CV. And yeah, this is Carpenter's version of that steel. I was excited to try some of that, and also I had not handled a domino yet, so I was really intrigued by this knife. And it was made possible by an awesome and just old-time subscriber of mine, and his name is Chris Sabo. And you guys, his Instagram screen name now is PGHEDC. I will correct myself if I'm wrong, but on Instagram that's his screen name, and I'm not sure if he changed his YouTube account name as well, but yeah, go give him a follow on Instagram, guys, if you can. He doesn't really have a channel here on YouTube, but he does have an account, obviously. What also came with this knife was this really cool Para 3 sticker, the Knife Life sticker, and also this Olight patch. Another knife that he lent me in this package was also the Spyderco Positron, this little guy. So I just want to give Chris a huge shout out and thank you. It's really great of him. And there was one other thing in the package, and you'll see it in a second. But yeah, just huge thank you to you, Chris. Not only for being a rad sub and for just being around since pretty much the beginning. Chris was one of my first subs. But also just for being a rad dude. And, you know, I mean, it's not everybody's gonna be able to lend their knives out. It was just really nice of him to do that, and also pretty much give me free reign to go ahead and sharpen and use these knives like they were mine. Also, these knives from me are gonna go to Gerald over at Outpost 76. He's gonna cut test them, then they're gonna go to Kurt, and they're gonna go through the whole the whole gamut of testing, and we are going to see what this 204P is at in HRC. We're also going to see how that performs with Gerald. So really excited, and huge shout out and thank you to Chris. Just going above and beyond, buddy, and just for being around for so long, and just, he was some of the inspiration at the beginning. So huge thanks to him. Moving on, I'm going to go ahead and, this is a hype versus reality. I'm going to go ahead and do it in the same fashion. Really quickly, I'll just say the hype versus reality is obviously the hype, which is created by a lot of things. The community, your own personal hype, YouTube videos, the manufacturer, the distributors give you some hype. So all of that hype, and then the reality, guys. The reality, once I got it out of box, in hand, using, carrying, did it live up to the hype? So, moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and in the same fashion, I'm going to go ahead and put the specs on the page right here. I don't like to waste your guys' time spewing off a bunch of specs, especially when you can mostly find these on the internet. So, moving right along, I'll go into some size comparisons. And in doing so, I'm going to bring out the Para 3, which you guys well know is one of my channel favorites. And the other gift, this was an actual gift from Chris, and that was this MXG deep carry that's on this knife now. It looks great. Yeah, it came with that anodizing job on it. You guys know I love MXG clips, and this one looks great on this knife. And I will always, I'll never refuse an MXG clip because I have so many Para 3s, I'll find one to put it on, or one of my other Spydercos. So thanks, thanks to Chris again for that. That's just above and beyond, buddy. Thank you so much. And you guys can see that's definitely a smaller knife than the Domino. Relatively significant. If I line the butts up, you're looking at about a 1/2 inch difference in overall length. Bring out the Spidey Chef. That is a slightly larger knife than the Domino, and definitely a lot less cutting edge. So yeah, that's those two. And then I'm going to have one more Spyderco, but I'm going to save him till the end. I'm going to bring out a couple of Benchmades, bring out the Bug Out, which is definitely a smaller knife than the Domino, although we're looking at more cutting edge, or about, yeah, a little more cutting edge, maybe an 1/8 inch more cutting edge. And then the 940, which is really similar. You got about a 1/4 inch more length, and then of course more cutting edge with that blade shape. One more that would technically kind of fall into a Benchmade, but it is actually a Hogue. This is the Hogue RSK, Doug Ritter, and it's very similar to the Benchmade full-size Griptilian. So that's a relatively good size comparison. You guys probably have one of those. And then I'll bring in the Cold Steel American Lawman, which is a larger knife. This is more in that like PM2 kind of size range, which also the RSK is. So you can see that the Domino is a smaller knife compared to those. I'll bring one more in, budget option. This is the Civivi Backlash, also a bit larger for sure. And then the last knife in this size comparison, and a really good comparison, I'll bring this guy in probably a few times throughout, and that's the Manix 2. This is the Knife Center exclusive with smooth G10 and crewwear. And you guys can see this is a larger knife, although it's relatively similar to the Domino. If you line the butts up, you're looking at about maybe 3/8 of an inch more overall length. But this is definitely the brother of the Domino, I feel like. Very similar outline, similar blade shape. Although you can say that, a lot of guys will say that about all Spydercos, that they all are just, variations of the leaf-shaped blade and the same handle ergos and everything. So a lot of guys will, make fun of the Spydercos for that. But very similar grip size, very similar overall size. So great comparison here, and we'll be bringing him back into the picture quite often. And moving right along, I am going to go into the hype, guys. What made me want to get this knife? What made me want to try it? What were the things that drew me to the knife? What was the things that drew the community to the knife? And what I'll say is, you've got a really good size for sure. Really good size EDC. This is that average EDC size that most guys feel comfortable carrying. You also have right around a 3-inch blade, which is good for most people's EDC tasks, and also legal. Although it is slightly over 3 inches, which might get into some people's legal laws. Although if a cop really gives you shit for that 1/16 of an inch, yeah, they probably have better things to do with their time, or probably don't have better things to do with their time. So, so that was one thing that drew me to the knife, was just its overall size. Also, I heard a lot of things about the geometry on these. I heard they had a really nice cutting geometry and grind. Also, you've got a Spyderco flipper, which isn't a very normal thing in Spyderco's line of knives. So it's nice to see a flipper on ball bearings. And then also you've got things like it's a titanium frame lock with an insert and over travel. It is made in the Taichung factory, so there's definitely some hype, positive and negative, that comes with that. It's just really intrigued by this knife, and I really wanted to try one. And there is some negative hype, guys, too, the bearings aren't very smooth, although they have changed. I believe they changed the bearing system in a lot of these knives, the Taichung factory flippers and stuff. But they've gotten some slack on that. They've also gotten some slack on the action of their ball bearings. which, like I said, they've tried to fix. And this knife just didn't really get... I didn't see as many positive reviews on this knife as I feel like I should have. I feel like there's a lot of guys that are just on the fence about this. They don't really, they don't go either way, or they just think that it's not as good of a flipper or as good of an action as you would expect in such an expensive knife. These are right in that mid to high 200 range in general. I'm not sure what this one was originally. I might put that on the screen right here. But yeah, these things, the Dominoes pretty much range from like the mid 200s to the high 200 range. 300s at some points. I think the MSRPs are in the 300s. And that's a lot of money to spend on a knife, guys. Especially a knife that a lot of people, I'm sure, feel like this should be some like really drop shutty. Like it should have a drop shut action. It should have, ceramic ball bearings, ceramic detent. It should have these things that we expect in a $300 knife. But in saying that, I'm not a believer in that. I don't subscribe to that necessarily. I believe that a knife is worth what it's, when put to use, is the knife worth the money that you spend on it. It's not all in like the action and the certain, you have to have this to get, you have to have M390 to have it be this expensive. I don't subscribe to that, guys. I really don't. Well done. A knife is worth what you're paying for it, as long as it's done to that caliber. A lot of guys will say Sabinza is not worth the money. I disagree. I think the attention to detail, the aspects of the knife warrant the money you're spending on it, and the warranty and all these other things warrant the money that you're spending. Now, of course, we know there's another negative hype with Spyderco's warranty. I'll address that as well. But it's just like, is it worth the money? That's a little bit of a negative hype that I've heard on the Domino. So, in moving forward, I am going to go into the reality, guys. And in reality, when I got this thing out of box, I was pretty impressed with the knife, guys. I'm not... I wasn't blown away necessarily by the action and these things. But first things first, I'll go into the fit and finish, as I always do. Oops, sorry, guys. The fit and finish, guys, is done really well. As you guys can see, things like the gaps, the interaction between the G10 and the titanium is pretty flush, guys. Really done well. And there's not a lot of things I would be able to complain about on the way that's executed. This is done much better than even some knives that I've spent a lot more money on. So that's done really well. And you almost expect it from Tai Chung to have nice finishes and nice interaction between surfaces and stuff like that. They do a really good job with that. And then you're looking at the titanium side. I love the stone wash kind of finish they do on it. It seems like they, maybe do a bead blast or something and then stone wash. Really nice finish on that. It's done really well. The texture on this is it's about the same as the Para 3. Maybe slightly smoother than the Para 3, but I mean just really similar. So that's done really well. A nice grip without being like over grippy. This obviously that lands on the lock on the titanium side, so you're not worried about going in and out there. I know that comes later, guys. So yeah, pretty much perfect centering. I mean, as far as finish goes, this thing is done very well. The blade, you've got that satin grind lines left with the satin over top. It's a pretty nice finish. It does hide scratches well, although you will see we do have scratches on this blade. So because of that, like almost mirror satin, you will see some scratches. But really nice. You can see the finish angle, the grind angles change at the plunge. That is one thing I'll say about the finish, is that you do have a bit of a weird plunge grind, how it kind of curves, and then it's curved on that side, but a little different. It actually terminates at the hole in a different spot, but pretty similar. So done pretty well. Grind lines are done pretty evenly. Grind, like as far as the primary, is done very well. This is a 15-degree angle on that. I'll get to that later. But yeah, so really done well. And then the jimping, this is actually done really well for Tai Chung. Most of the Tai Chungs I felt have been much sharper. This is actually chamfered very nicely. The hole's still fairly sharp. It doesn't really bother me that much, guys. That never really bothers me too much, but this one's done better than a lot of other Spidey holes I felt. It is getting nail, but not like as gnarly as some of them. But done pretty well. And then the spine is chamfered nicely. No sharp edge there, really. Slightly, but just enough to kind of grab a little bit of nail off, but nothing that's going to bother you, really, I don't feel. So that's done really well. All the chamfering on the handles is done really well, which is expected. The inside isn't chamfered as gnarly, or as heavily as I think it could have been, but you can see there's a little chamfer there. And they're so close because of that thin blade stock that you don't really notice the channel as much as some knives. So yeah, that's done really well. And fit and finish wise, this knife was done, I don't know if it's up to the level of what people would expect for the money, but I think it's done extremely well. Moving forward, the action, guys. Yeah, this isn't like a fidget knife. This isn't, I don't even know if it's on the level of something like the Para 3, where you got the compression lock and you can, one hand close it all day and, swing it out, swing it back. And it's not a fidget knife, guys. I wouldn't think of this as a fidget knife. But the action is really snappy in any type of method. Doing a pull, more of that light switch pull works very well. Doing a push button, it flies out even better. The detent seems to be extremely dialed in on this. Left-handed, it's really no big deal at all in any way. I don't know if I've ever actually failed to deploy this. And then of course you have the Spidey hole for the middle finger flick, or thumb flick, or roll it out. In a way, this is a really fidget friendly knife, but that's not exactly what I think of when I pick this knife up. I don't think like, oh, this is just a fidget, master. You do hear the bearing roll. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear that. There is bearing roll, and it's not like the smoothest knife ever. You do feel like a little bit of grittiness in the bearings. These are steel bearings from what I understand. I think that this is a CQI version where it has like a race where the bearings actually run up against like a washer that's set inside. I believe that's what the case is with these. Maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I did not take this knife apart. I didn't want to do that, but yeah, because it isn't mine, but I'm sure Chris would have allowed me to. I haven't had a whole lot of time either to take all this apart and put it back together, but you know what I'm saying. So I have noticed some bearing roll. I have noticed it's not the smoothest, craziest action. Obviously, it's not like a drop shut type of knife, although you can swing it shut with like one nice swing. You just hear the bearings when you're doing it. But it is fun to play with, guys, don't get me wrong. But it's just not like that fidget knife that I would a lot of guys are looking for. As you guys can see, the stop pin is all inside. So there's probably like I said, I didn't take this knife apart, but there's probably a stop pin rod that's within the blade. There's probably a channel within the blade where that stop pin runs along. and that's how that works. It's probably a stop pin for both the closing and opening action. We have seen Spyderco do this in the past. So yeah, really nice design, guys, and overall I think this is a really well designed and executed knife. The action is great, but it's not like that fidget type of action. And I mean, look at the detent here. It clicks in, but it's not like something where it's like pop, you know, like a loud pop that we all kind of have been accustomed to at this point. That's very satisfying. But everything else about the action is just, I mean, it executes. I mean, it just gets it done, guys. It's just very functional. And that's where I think this knife excels. Moving forward, I'm going to go into the blade. The blade, guys, right here I'm going to go ahead and put on the some footage of me cutting with it. Guys, this is where this knife just really just comes to life. And this is where I believe this knife, what it's made for, guys. It's got such a great cutting geometry. The primary of this knife is gone aggressively. It does have a nice broad primary. You know, it's a pretty broad blade shape with that leaf shape. And it is ground very aggressively and very well to the cutting edge. And it does get a nice thin behind the edge dimension. And in saying that, it was just screaming, man. This thing just screams through material. It is done so well. It was extremely sharp when I got it from Chris. He put a very good edge on this thing. It was super sticky and hair popping for sure. And it just did extremely well against cardboard and anything I wanted to put it up against. And I was extremely impressed with the geometry of this knife. The 204P, this is my first experience with CTS 204P. Like I mentioned before, guys, 204P is analogous of like other like M390 family steels. So M390, 20CV, of course 204P. Even LMAX kind of falls in a bit in that family, even though LMAX is definitely a different chemistry. But yeah, as far as 204P goes and the way that Spyderco executed it here, it's done really well. I definitely felt like it apexed easily. It deburred fairly easily. It wasn't amazing. I've definitely used better, but it's done really well. And I really enjoyed the 204P. I did a lot of work, as you guys can see here. I did get a lot of work done with this blade, with this edge, and it seems to still be pretty sharp. It does seem to hold an edge very well. Although I don't know if I'd put it up there in like, you know, I don't think it's going to be a 62 HRC 204P. I think it's probably going to be right around in that 60 range. You know, from my experience, it's kind of where I think it's going to land. It seems to be refined pretty well. It definitely seems to take an edge very well, and it came up screaming sharp. It was whittling, and it just took a nice edge overall. It wasn't like mind-blowing or anything, but it definitely took a nice edge, did a very good job. So I'm very happy with the way this knife performed overall. Blade steel, blade grind, it just really did extremely well. And as far as ergos go, that's where this knife, guys, of course with the performance in general, but the ergonomics of this knife is where it kind of set itself apart as far as like a knife that is just, you can throw it in your pocket for any situation and it's going to execute very well. So yeah, in saying that, I'm going to bring you guys back and we're going to talk more about the ergonomics. We'll talk more about the geometry, of course, and I'll get more into depth with what I'm talking about. So, bring you back, I'm going to go ahead and we'll bring out the calipers real quick. We're all zeroed out. As you guys can see, that is a 15 degrees per side bevel. And make sure it's all zeroed out. 13 thousandths, guys. That's pretty impressive. $16 thousandths right there. Yeah, guys, this is where this knife just really blows me away. And why they don't do this with more of their grinds is beyond me. 23 at the tip. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. You know, I mean, and you're talking about, what is this, about 12? Okay, so we're talking 1100 blade stock thickness, which is, you know, that's pretty good. Or 110 thousandths, or however you guys want to say it. I know I got some flack last time on my last video of like how I should say a certain, you know, I should say it 100 thousandths. I shouldn't say 1/10 or 10 hundredths or, guys, it's all right. Yeah, I did make a mistake and say like, I said 1,000th instead of, or I said like 10 thousandths instead of, I meant like 1/10. But anyways, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, moving right along, I'm going to talk about the ergonomics now. And as far as ergonomics go, guys, this knife was spectacular. For my hands, I've got 3 3/4 inch broad hand, about 4 inches tall from this point to the base of my middle finger. And then from this point to the tip of my middle finger is about 6 1/4 to 6.5 inches. So that's going to tell you kind of how much that's, you know, how it's going to fit in your hand. And I got to say, guys, with this finger choil here and the way that it cups right around, I mean, even in the back here, how it curves back and gives you that little bit of real estate for your pinky, yeah, it fits my hand just so well. And this clip, the spoon clip on this knife just seems to fit and almost makes a palm swell for me. I don't think I would change this clip, to be honest. But yeah, super comfortable. Moving up into the choil, yeah, really comfortable there as well. This knife is just extremely comfortable in all ways to me, guys. And that's where I'm talking about. This knife is just functionally really well done. Just everything about it fits my hand. There's no unnecessary jimping on the handle. Even the lock bar right here, it's not super thin and it's kind of short in distance, so it really doesn't affect the ergonomics. This is an extremely comfortable handle, guys, for my hands. And that's where like something like the Manix 2, if I was comparing these two, the Manix 2 is just littered with jimping, guys. And although I think it's done, you know, it's not horrible, and this knife really fits my hand well also, that jimping does start to get to me after time in long-term use. It's just unnecessary in my opinion, especially with such a contoured knife. I mean, this thing has contours in every spot, you know, like why would you need that to be jimped so heavily? I think that is the one thing that this knife, it needs to change. You don't need all that jimping, guys. You really don't. Maybe if you're using gloves, you do, but how many of us really like walk around EDC with gloves on? I know it does happen, guys, but you know, make an option where it has jimping, and then maybe most of the different exclusives and stuff, like take the jimping off, because I don't think this is necessary, really. I mean, even with the smooth G10, I don't find any time where this knife wants to slip out of my hand, even in the opening and closing. Yeah, I don't see where you would need so much jimping. But and this really does all of that without all that jimping, and it's just really nice, guys. And I didn't notice the things that bug me about the Manix 2 just weren't bugging me with the Domino. And it pretty much has all the capabilities that the Manix 2 has. And it's also going to give you a smaller dimension in the pocket, which we'll go into the pocket in a second, but it's definitely smaller in the pocket as well. So, yeah, those are the things that just blow my mind. Like, why didn't they, you know, do that? Why didn't they take that idea and kind of get it into the Manix, where you don't need all this jimping and everything? yeah, maybe, you know, that was what they were going for, but I personally think it's unnecessary. And this is the proof right here. You don't need all that jimping, and this is so much more comfortable because of that. So I really enjoyed this knife, guys, and as you can tell, at this point I'm going to go ahead and bring in the scale, and we're going to talk about the in the pocket. This thing is really nice in the pocket. It is a little heavy. You're looking at 4.06 ounces. Not heavy, guys. This is really not heavy. But when you're talking like blade, I know some guys want like blade to weight ratio. You know, something that's like the same weight as... let me go ahead and show you what the Manix is. This is the exclusives. Exclusives have some milling on the liners, so it's a little lighter. That's why I only get the exclusives in the G10. That's nice, guys. It's right in that same weight range, which is really nice to see. But if you get these and they're not exclusives, they don't have the milling on the liners, and they're like 5.5 ounces. So something to think about. Yeah, moving on. As far as the clip goes, obviously the clip, we all know the Spyderco spoon clip. This works extremely well going in and out of the pocket. I like the functionality of their clip, as long as it's placed correctly and doesn't give you that horrible poking that we get in a lot of the Spyderco spoon clips, and why I mostly change them to MXG. Also, the carry is not bad as far as how high it is in your pocket. It's not amazing either. You got a lot hanging out, but you know, I guess you could try an MXG clip, and I probably will eventually, but it doesn't bother me where this clip is from the factory. So unless you really hate having a lot of knives sticking up, I would say you could totally get away with just having the factory clip. And it does carry really well. It angles back a little bit in the pocket, and it's easy to get in because of this curve here. And I had no issues with carrying this knife, and really enjoyed carrying it. So moving on into like my conclusion, guys, this is a great knife. I'm super stoked with it. Am I gonna buy one? Yes, I actually already did. It's on its way to me. I got the version that's actually discontinued with like the horrible like Cosby sweater G10 or carbon fiber or whatever that was. And it has CTS XHP steel, which I love CTS XHP, especially done by Spyderco. And it also, what I'm going to end up doing is I'll probably end up doing an anodizing on the titanium scale and making a micarta, you know, cover scale for the show side, and getting rid of that Cosby sweater design. I know a lot of guys probably like it. I'm not really into it. Of course, in person, I might like it more. Yeah, guys, if you like the Manix, I think that you will love the Domino. Unless your hands, I mean, although this is pretty much the same grip size, I'll say it maybe is a little bit broader in your hands. So maybe if your hands are bigger, the Manix will fit a little bit better. But if your hands are my size or similar to my size, I think you would be extremely happy with the Domino Ergonomics. It is a little far from the edge back here, but I would say that's pretty much the case with any Spyderco or anything that has a forward finger choil. But yeah, this up here, you're very close, and it's very comfortable still. So I really enjoyed this knife. Oh, guys, I did forget to show you. There was one other thing that Chris gave me that was just above and beyond, and that was this Scar Hanks. Yeah, really stoked. This is really nice of him, and I really love the design. It's got that old, like, sailor, what's it called, tattoo designs, and I really dig it. So thank you so much, Chris, for going above and beyond, and I really loved everything. You know, all the things you put in the package with the two knives you let me, you know, loan me. So I'm really stoked, and I love it, guys. I really do love this knife, and I would suggest it to a lot of people. As long as your hand size is similar to mine, and you are, you know, you like that thin geometry. It does have a fairly, acute tip, so you're not going to be prying with it or anything. I didn't talk about that. But yeah, for a slicing type of geometry, and that's what you pretty much do with your knives, I think this is an excellent option with excellent geometry. Very well done, Spyderco. I wish they did that with the Manix. I wish they went that thin with the Manix grind. But they might be kind of targeting this to more of that hard use type of mentality. Although it still does have a fairly thin tip, guys. I think they should be grinding this knife just like the Domino, personally. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it has value for you guys. And I will see you on the next one. Have a great day.